Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. And we are back at the Space Center after our incredibly fun Martian Moonhopper mission. And now we can actually see the results of doing what we did and actually focusing on getting the contract completed. And so we have the mission for Phobos landing complete. Landing a probe on another planetary body in our system is no easy feat. Science gathered from this lander will unlock some of the secrets of the solar system, and I think that is absolutely correct because we are going to be getting hundreds and hundreds of science from our Martian Moonhopper lander. I wish the info that you could actually, I wish you could actually see the info even when it wasn't connected, but you know, is what it is. But there was something like 600 or so science that we collected on that vessel so far, and we're just going to get more and more until the batteries on the orbiter run out. And by the time the batteries die on the orbiter, hopefully we'll have more communications probes out in Martian orbit that are there to do relaying of communications back from more possible permanent installations, bases on the ground, and space stations, all that kind of thing. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves tonight and dreaming about the future, let's talk about what we have right now, which is 5 million funds. Woo! Man, that is real good. I'm really excited about that, and I have two things that I'm thinking about. So just to kind of recap briefly, because I know I've done this before, is we're working on the astronaut complex, which is going to allow us to plant flags. We're working on a 1,500 ton limit launch pad, which should be done in 70 days, and that is going to be that's going to be an interesting thing. I'm actually having trouble building to that limit right now. Like, I'm having trouble making a rocket that large with the parts that I have, but that is mostly just a failure of imagination on my part. So there's just more work that I need to do in actually planning that out. And also there are some rocket pieces that I would love to unlock into the future to make better launch vehicles that are going to be able to lift more stuff, because we're kind of limited at like 13 or 15 tons or something like that we can send into a translunar trajectory. And we need at least 20 tons because that's how big the Apollo service module is. So anyways, 1,500 ton launch pad is coming up, and that is going to help us to break through that barrier and send out more Apollo architecture towards the moon. We're building the research and development next level, which is going to get me 200 science limit. And more importantly for my purposes right now is it's going to get us 125% extra, or an extra 25% research rate, which I think is going to be lovely. It might have been more efficacious for me to just buy 4 million funds worth of points to increase my R&D. And the same thing goes for the vehicle assembly building, because I'm thinking about buying the next upgrade here, but I'm not sure if I should do this and have 3 build queues, or if I should actually just buy 175 upgrade points. Alright, so I've done some thinking, and I think that I am actually just dramatically behind on my KCT upgrade points. I've kind of scanned through the RP-1 Discord to kind of just see where other people are at, and a lot of folks recommend being at like 2 to 1 with their R&D compared to their vehicle assembly building points, and I am not at that. And with how much I've been complaining about R&D and the fact that my rockets are still building fairly quickly, I haven't had too many problems considering. I think that what we need to do is just like really go all in, and I'm going to spend just a bunch of money, and 3, 2, 1, boop. Yeah, that's just 2 million funds, and then maybe another 2 million funds, why not? On 200 KCT upgrade points. So I'm not really going to spend much on that, but I can do this to increase to 2.673 science per day. And you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just make that happen. And there we go. Now I've just spent 4 million on improving our research and development, which got us an increase of 60% faster science now. So we look at our tech tree here, and yeah, all of a sudden all those 40 day, 50 day, 60 days are now in the 10, 20, 30 range, which is just lovely. So yeah, that will help a lot, and that keeps us from hoarding all of this cash. And I'm going to save $1 million because I'd like to keep that amount in case I need to tool some big new rocket or do rush building or something like that. But that seems like a good amount to just kind of hold on to. But yeah, 4 million funds pumped into research and development. I was thinking about building the vehicle assembly building level 3, but I just don't feel the need to really push into this quite yet. So what I think my plan is, and please let me know what you think about this plan, or if you think that there's a better way, gamey though it is I'm trying to get back to that 2-to-1 ratio of R&D to vehicle assembly building, and then I can start leveling them up. Like every 3 points, I put 2 in one and 1 in the other. That whole thing, and also work on building upgrades as I get the chance. So yeah, that's kind of what my thinking is now, is trying to get back up to that, because I'm just not that stressed about how fast these rockets are building, because they're building pretty quick. Like a lunar Gemini does take about 100 days. If we scooch that up, it takes about 100 days to build one of these, but that's also like the training takes almost that long, right? So that's not a great amount of time. So I would like to improve that, but I think getting the research up to the point where we can do more and better missions is more important than how long it takes to build an individual rocket. So I've put that in there. Maybe I'll regret it. Maybe I'll go back and build, or not go back, but maybe I'll put my money into increasing build rate here pretty soon. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. All right, and warping to the next thing, and we have another 5 points because science is coming back from Phobos, which is just fantastic. We are grooving indeed. 6 seconds to lift off of our Lunar 1 spacecraft on a Titan 3E. Ignition and immediate liftoff on those massive solid rocket boosters. Yes, indeed, we are basically sending that exact same spacecraft that we use to put our geostationary low Earth orbit satellite network into orbit. We are basically doing that exact same thing, but we are doing it for the moon. Let's rotate, please. There we go. Yeah, so the plan here is I have 3 satellites that I have planned to put into orbit around the moon, and this is kind of part of our Solarback 2 mission failure, I guess you could call it. One of the reasons why we had trouble with that one and why that failed was because it was we didn't have connection directly back home, and that's not great. But that could have been addressed by having an orbiter, kind of like we're doing with our Mars missions, all of our other lander missions, where they just fly overhead and they give you signal kind of intermittently and you get to send back a big burst of data, that whole thing. So that's one way to do it. But we are planning to do a whole lot of stuff around the moon, right? Like, so this is not it. Like, we're not just sending one rover and then we're done. Like, we have bigger plans around the moon. We're going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff. I would like to actually put down, if not a settlement, because, again, I don't really know what the long-term life support situation looks like with Kerbalism. It may not be that I can build, like, a self-sustaining moon base like I did in my other making Kerbals multiplanetary series. I don't think I'll be able to do quite that much. Like, there's just not that kind of in-depth in situ resource utilization in Kerbalism for RP-1, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about that. But anyways, I don't think that's something that we're going to be able to do in the scope of this. However, we are going to be doing more stuff, more rovers, more landers, more temporary habitation on the surface. All things that are going to help prepare us for our travel to Mars. We are just about at the burnout of our solid rocket boosters. So those are spinning down. We're just squeezing out the last bits of fuel as we can. And as we get down to almost no rated thrust, our main booster spins up and we kick those off, and they drift away, just spitting out the last bits of their fuel with no real thrust. But yeah, we are on our way. This is going fairly well so far. But yeah, so we have lots of plans and lots of things we're going to do at the moon that will require communications. So I don't see any reason why not to put basically the exact same communications network that I put into orbit around Earth, we are going to put into orbit around the moon. So yeah, I will see you up in orbit so long as there's no additional drama with this. I don't expect there to be too much. These are fairly reliable, but you know I'll always let you know if something goes awry. Alright, so we've had an entirely uneventful launch so far, which is just fantastic. My fairing was acting up and wanted me to manually stage it, but other than that, we have had no real issues, which is just lovely. This vessel has been modified from the one that I launched before in basically only two ways. First, I've increased the dBm on the antenna that this thing is using, both of the sets of antenna, so that it can better communicate. One thing I didn't think to do was to actually go in and upgrade them now that I've got the antenna upgrade. Like it didn't occur to me to do it for my communications network when I was really just doing it for my Jupiter launch. But that's fine. The level of communications that these have is going to be fine for the task it is trying to perform. What I'm more worried about is the freaking solar panels dying rather than the antennas not being enough. I do want to upgrade to level 5. Level 5? Yeah, tech level 5 antenna as soon as possible because they're just better in every way, because now we're actually seeing the power starting to come down even as our transfer rate still continues to increase. But there's that's expensive, and this thing was almost finished building, so I guess it's good enough that we could just get that done. So I'm going to extend the solar panels here because, or actually let's just take a look. Let's just take stock. We have about 2 days of power, so yeah, we are going to need to, well, maybe not, shut down the avionics, and we'd have two days about. Yeah, so we're going to need to turn on the solar panels, so let's do that. Turn all of those on, and then we're going to turn on one of the antennas. We're going to extend so that we make sure that we have communications the whole time that we are doing these operations. Because this, I think it has, yep, it just has a janky tech level 1 antenna for basic control in low Earth orbit. Neat. I never get sick of this particular shot of the Earth and the clouds rolling over it. Just so good. Oh, I suspect. Clouds were a little bit wrong, but they're updated now, and it looks just lovely. Just lovely. Okay, so now that we have that finished, now it's time to head out to the moon. And I have just, like, way more Delta V than I thought I was going to at this point. Like, I'm honestly shocked at how much extra Delta V I have. I think this is a slightly overtuned rocket for what we're doing here, which is my bad, I guess. But it's also kind of fine. So let's see. We want to get equatorial with the moon to get the best coverage, or I guess that's not necessarily the best quote-unquote coverage, but we just want it to be in one particular place where it's relatively easy to do what we're trying to do here. So yeah, because we can go pretty damn far. So yeah, it looks like we could easily get just as far out from the moon as we would from Earth, which is actually great. But trying to remember what the actual communications range is for stuff on the ground, because I feel like I calculated this. All right, well, let me just take a look. We are going to just see. Yeah, I'm just going to plan this against itself, and if I understand the antenna planner, this means that we will be planning with like as if I was targeting another antenna of the exact same type. I think. Please correct me if I'm understanding this wrong, because I'm about to make some very momentous decisions based on this information. And it looks like so long as we are within 44 megameters, we are going to have signal. Really bad signal, but signal, which is fine. So if we go down as low as, I don't know, let's say 10 million meters? Yeah, 10 million meters. Let's just see. Then we might be able to do a bit better. So let's open this up and let's see if I was using, for example, a probe core. If I was communicating with a probe core. Refresh the planner. Looks like the numbers would be exactly the same. So yeah, 10 million meters looks like it would be good for either probe cores or regular long antenna at a range of 10 million meters. So that is what I'm going to plan on doing. Close that up. And we can plan on something like this, where we are about 10 million meters away from the lunar surface and projecting down, and that is going to give us just complete clear sight lines towards the moon. So we should always have a signal if we do this. In theory, like with level 4, either probe core or long antennas, communitrons, we should be able to have a signal based on that, and that should give us excellent coverage. Our big dishes are going to be pointing this way, but we can use just UHF Omni antennas to get the signal from the surface. So that is what I think we are going to plan to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going over to this the Meyer Webb, Eric Meyer's resonant orbit calculator, which is I'm going to just plug in 3 satellites at 10 million meters and see what it has to say about that. Because that is well above the minimum line of sight orbit, so we shouldn't have any problem with that, and it gives me what the numbers should be for the orbit that we are going to get into. So it wants us to get into an orbit that is 10 million meters by 14,962,768.1 meters. So once again, it doesn't need to be exactly that, but what it does need to be is exactly the same for all 3. So remember, that is the most important thing when setting up a Commnet, is making sure that all of your satellites in the network are in a particular, how to put it, make sure that they have the exact same orbital parameters for exact same orbital period, very similar inclination, very similar eccentricity, and if you have those matched up as well as you possibly can, that is going to give you satellites that will not drift out of sync. That is the important part here, because they are not going to be geostationary around the moon. Lunar stationary, whatever you want to call it. They will be orbiting around the moon, but I also don't care about that. I think that's not going to be a problem. With 3 satellites that are always able to see each other and always able to see, what do you call it? Always able to see Earth, we should always have communication 100% of the time. It doesn't matter where they are seated over the moon. So, okay, I just looked it up at what a lunar stationary orbit would be, and that would be 88, which we can't do. That's outside of the sphere of influence. 88,000 kilometers, which is obviously beyond what we can do. So, that is what it would take to do a stationary orbit, so we're just not going to worry about it at all and just do a very high orbit above the moon, but it is and rotating always, but that is once again not a problem at all. So yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking for. It looks like because we are launching in the plane, we don't have to do any trickery to maintain a near zero inclination, but we will be able to do some adjustments once we get there. But this is step one, so let's get to it. All right, so we fired up our engine and we are now on our way out, engines, I suppose, and we are now on our way towards the moon with communication satellites, which is really damn exciting. Like, it's really fun to build this kind of infrastructure, not just around Earth, but actually out and around other bodies, other planets. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be doing this around the moon because this really shows that we are going to be there to stay. We are going to the moon. We are building infrastructure to do more missions, to do more exploration. And that's going to help us with our lunar space station. It's going to help us with lunar bases. It's going to help us with rovers. It's going to help us like so much. There's been a lot of times where this has been just a huge sticking point. But this launch here, so long as, you know, fingers crossed, nothing terrible happens, should get us the infrastructure we need to unlock the other half of the moon. So the far side of the moon will be available to us for exploration. We don't just have to land on the face of the moon that we have seen here, which is very exciting. All right, just about to wrap up this first burn, and then we will do some adjustments, and then it is just on its way out. But yeah, I'm like, can you believe just how far we've come as far as our how far our space program has come so far? Like, this is, I have an extra, like, I don't know, 4,000 meters per second of delta V by the time we actually get there, because we are going to lose a bunch of liquid hydrogen on the way out there. But like, we've come quite a long way from when we started this. Like, I'm able now to put something like this into orbit that is able to get out to the moon, drop off 3 probes, just no problem at all. It's super cool. Like, it's really fun to have come all this way. It's really hard for me to think about playing a non-real solar system game of KSP now, just because, like, I needed to put together 11,000 meters per second of delta V just to get into this orbit that intersects with the nearest possible body. So yeah, it's we've kind of come a long way in our abilities here. The Titan 3E is just a magnificent machine, and we have some really awesome stuff, like really great capabilities that we have that we've put together. So all very exciting stuff that I'm really happy about. So let's just get this whipped around. All right, so we are set up. We have power. LunarNet 1 will, has 5 days of power, and then once the avionics shuts off, we will have more than enough. That gets us to 24 days, so not quite perpetual, but close enough, right? Activate avionics, make sure we're pointed in the correct direction. And there we go. I don't think we have anything coming up in between now and then. We do need to go check on the Martian Moonhopper here in a moment, but for now we can get this finished, so let's do that now. All right, we have entered the sphere of influence of the moon. Very exciting. So I'm just going to kill rotation for the moment, because what I would like to do, I just want to bring our orbit down just a touch to try to get down to that 10 million mark. There we go. That's a little bit closer. How many burns do I have left on these things? 7? That seems fine. Let's... There we go. That'll do. Run the rest on HTP to get this all the way down to as close to exactly 10 million meters as possible, because I'm trying to use a formula basically for the resonant orbit. So I want this to be as close as possible, even though it's going to be like not obviously not very exact at all. Okay, so now we are going to, and I'm going to use MacLeod for this because I need to punch in numbers as opposed to just doing this by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my Apolloon, question mark, is it going to complain for me doing this? Not be lower than the altitude of the burn. I mean, yeah, fine. 49627. 4962 is it. Yeah, so that's what we're looking for, and this is going to be our resonant orbit, and then that is going to be where we, just like we did last time, this will have us go around, and then each time we go around this circle, we will drop off one satellite, it will circularize, and we will be all set up with a communications network. So this is basically all we're looking for here. So we are 20 hours away from this, and we should be fine on power, so let's go ahead and execute next node. All right, ullaging up and preparing to initiate the burn, and there we go. Fabulous. Yeah, so this has all been just very uneventful, and this is the last burn of an engine that is not generic, so this should be the last time that we have a test light failure that is possible. So yeah, really quite happy about how this mission has turned out. We have just way too much Delta V on this thing. I do feel a little bit silly for sending big overbuilt spacecraft to do stuff, but you know, also whatever. Okay, so let's continue this burn because we need to get down to 14,962,768. 962. Okay, so that's good. There we go. That is going to be, I think, close enough so we can kill rotation. And this is where we want to be. So now it's just a matter of dropping off each probe at our Paraloon, and then we go around, and then every time we get back to it, that is when we drop off another spacecraft. And so actually, I don't think there's any reason why we can't just leave one right here, because we are at our Paraloon right now. Right now. So I think we should do that, because then I can kind of fast forward through the next two and kind of show you guys what all is the plan. So what I'm going to do is we are going to point this towards the sun so that the remaining bit of spacecraft has solar power. And so we don't have to move around an unbalanced spacecraft primarily. Okay, so that's perfect, nice and steady. Now we're just going to get in here and we are going to decouple this spacecraft right here. And there it goes, tumbling off. Boot everything up. We have no avionics. All right, so I have done a big dumb once again. I'm really not sure how I managed to mess this up quite as badly as I have, but it may be kind of fine. I guess we're gonna see. But so let me explain what's happened here. So first of all, this thing has 0.42 tons of avionics, which seems very specific, and I remember this craft working before, but this craft now weighs 0.842 tons. That's like double. That's double. And I don't know what I have done to increase the weight of this by double from the last time I flew the thing. And one of the things that I also didn't think to change was it still has the stupid Commnet payload. Which I'll bet you if I could figure out a way to dump this, like with HyperEdit or whatever, I bet you that would actually correct the weight down to what it should be. But, or not what it should be, but I bet you if I got rid of this, that's probably the difference in weight that would get it down into avionics range, but that seems cheaty, so I'm not going to do it. So I think we're just going to have to suffer with my failure and just have a Commnet network that is in a very weird, wrong orbit, because the communications hardware on this seems to be working just fine. So what I could probably, well, it's going to be dead, unless I just like jump off at exactly the right time. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do probably is leave this in orbit. And I guess I'm going to have to fly another mission like this. I didn't think about the solar panels going away, so I would either have to like shut down the avionics. Yeah, it would be dead in 3 days, and so I would just have to do something like, wait for it, 94% gets us perpetual power for a long time. So yeah, I could do this where I have this in orbit and I just jump back to the Space Center. But ugh, that's annoying. So yeah, I'm gonna have to fix this because this is like a 100% brain fart on my part. Like there's just a whole bunch of things that I could have checked but didn't to make sure that this did not happen. And we'll probably launch this again on a smaller rocket, given just how much extra Delta V that we had. But let me just see a couple things that I want to check out before I give up on this entirely. And while we're doing that, I might as well just get this up to maximum solar panel production, 99.3, and then we're just going to go back to the Space Center. Okay, so the reason why I was rushing this as much as I was is we have a Lunar rover contract that is going to expire in just 23 days. And that is going to, and failure is going to cost us 400,000 funds, which is, as usual, more than the advance and completion combined. So that's in 23 days, but the Solarback 2 is going to head out there in 17. So I think we just kind of have to let this ride and then try to fix this with a better LunaNet afterwards. So yeah, I am going to accept my fate, and let's, wow, we got a whole bunch of upgrades. I was just checking this while I was talking. Put all that into R&D. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I think, is put that into, drop off those satellites, I guess, at different points in the orbit. Or, yeah, because we put the one into a resonant, not the resonant, into the resonant orbit, not the actual orbit. So that one's always going to be really off. But what I could do is try to, like, just fire the engine in both directions and just drop, like, just kick out the other probes on the way, I suppose. I kind of hate it, but it's also probably fine. I just did some rush building on the Solarback 2 to try to make sure that that is still ahead, because it's not, it's pretty far off, actually. So that's going to be done in 14 days, and then there's going to be a rollout, and I don't know how long that rollout's going to be necessarily. It also just occurs to me that I just spent 100,000 funds rush building something so that I don't take a 400,000 fund penalty, so maybe I just leave this as is and cut my losses. If that ends up coming to it, I can have it on the next pass if it really comes down to that. Or finish the contract with this one when we get there anyways. Alright, so we've done one full orbit of the moon with our Telenet satellites, and we have 5 ignitions left. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down into a smaller orbit here, and what I'm actually, hold on, let's. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I think that there's two options. So first of all, I could try to like manually do a 2 satellite constellation resonant orbit, and what that would involve is pushing us up to about 17.285 million meters, and then doing the slowdown burn to drop off a satellite and then speeding back up, and then coming all the way around, doing a slowdown burn, dropping off the satellite, and then deorbiting the rest of the spacecraft of this Centaur here. So I could do that. That is one option. Otherwise, I could just drop off these satellites once on each turn around the moon here, and then just like let them be wherever they're going to be, because this is already going to be pretty close. Shoot, you know what? I do need to do that. So, okay, that's what we're going to do. I am going to orbital prograde, and we are going to do a like just basic approximation of a two node constellation. Just, it's going to be off. It's going to be really bad, but it's going to at least have these 3 relay satellites in a different place, other than dropping off another satellite right here when there's one right there. That's not helpful in any way. Okay, so we're looking for about 17,285. And that's going to be just this little teeny tiny burn that I'm going to have MacLeod do for us. And then once I get around, then I will do 2 more burns to slow down into the final orbit, drop off a satellite, speed back up, and then go back around and do the final one. And then that will drop this off, and then we will have at least some kind of communications, and then I can revisit this without being such a doofus about like panic building old comsats that still have the contract payloads in them. For goodness sake. So yeah, that is what I think we're going to do, and that is not terribly interesting. We're just whipping around now to get to point at the sun to make sure that we have that communication. So I am going to set a node for our Periloon. And that's going to be in 2 days, but after the Martian Moonhopper. But that is actually all the time that we have for today's episode. I'll probably finish this maybe off screen, or maybe I'll jump into that after I do the Martian Moonhopper if it's pretty interesting. So I'll let you know about that. But that is going to do it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and I will see you next time.